Hi, I'm Scott Baker. I'm a resident and property owner in Willis ISD. I'm also a parent with students in Willis ISD. This is the second video of this type I've made. It's a follow-up actually to the one I made for the spring bond issue. The school board had put up 4 bonds in the spring, and only one of them passed, was for a 9th grade campus, and 3 of them failed, and they've chosen to put them back up for election again in November. This will be the 3rd time for 2 of those issues to be on the ballot, and each time previously the voters of Willis ISD have voted them down. They've said no and rejected these. So I did some more research. I attended the planning meetings, or at least one of the planning meetings for Willis ISD, as well as the bond talk meeting. To gather information. I've also been doing research online, continued, to find out a little bit more about what's going on, and I wanted to share that with you and how I feel about these bonds. Proposition A is $27 million for a student activity center. This is a foyer for art shows, classrooms, media, wrestling rooms. They've talked about the band and things, and you see the list there on the side of some of the activities they're talking about putting there. Proposition B is a $68.8 million athletic complex and stadium. It's a football stadium, 8,500 seats, concessions, field house, and parking for that. Proposition C is a $19.6 million aquatic center. Basically an Olympic-sized swimming pool, platform and springboard, locker rooms, and space for spectators. Let's start with Proposition A, $27 million for a student activity center. The rationale that's been given for this in the spring, they really haven't updated any of the rationale for this. The band and sports team practice inside when it's hot. And I said this in the spring, and I continue to believe this is true. Texas has always been hot. The temperature data is available, and there's been no changes in the regular cyclical temperatures. Last year was a relative high that matched a similar relative high 10 years ago, and it's cooler this year than it was last year, which is normal of the cyclical weather. One of the things cited is that this building is necessary because of UIL rules and what's called the wet bulb test. That is a new measurement that they're using to gauge when students and athletes should be having activities outside and for how long. Problem is it's not a rule. It's a recommendation. I looked up the UIL 24-2025 recommended heat protocols and procedures is what it's referred to as. You can look it up yourself. It is a recommendation. It is not a rule. It's not a requirement. Obviously, we want our students to be safe, but again, our students have been safe, and our coaches, can use common sense and make sure that our kids are well hydrated and rested properly and adjust to the temperatures. While still continuing the activities that we have. One of the other reasons that was given for this being a need was that the local community could possibly use or rent things like bridal showers and things like that. I continue to think that this is just simply not a purpose of ISD resources. There's simply no good rationale that we should spend $27 million so that the community can rent things out. We have plenty of facilities in the community that are available for rent or use in public consumption. Proposition B, $68.8 million for a football stadium. The repeated statement is that the existing stadium is old, but it's actually fine, and the truth is that it's seldom filled. Old does not equal bad. It would be nice to have a new stadium. That is true. But there's nothing actually wrong with the old stadium. The new one would be 8,500 seats. The existing one is 4,500 seats. I've asked for data on this. They don't publish any data for the stadium, for the ticket sales for the stadium. They do have an odd rule that caps out the sales of tickets at 2,000, so they only sell 2,000 seats for attendance at the stadium. And the reality is, and I'll talk about this here in a minute, is that the stadium is actually rarely even at capacity, let alone needing overflow or more seating. But if it did need seating, there are options available, and I haven't seen any data, even though I've asked in the spring and now, has anybody researched what it would cost, what it looks like to expand the stadium, or another field that we have as well that I'll talk about here in a minute. The picture you see is a junior high football game. I go to the 9th grade football games. I've been to some of the varsity and JV games as well. Most of the games, especially junior high and 9th grade, this is what the stadium capacity seating looks like. Not even close to full, not even remotely used at capacity. The JV games are slightly better attended, but still not at capacity. The only games that would be at close to capacity that you can see the stadium is obviously full is varsity football game, varsity home football games, including homecoming, right? Of those, there are approximately 5 each year. I have the football schedule. I've looked it up and did the research. I don't even know that all of them would be at capacity other than homecoming and maybe a couple of the other home games. So at a maximum, we're looking at 5 events per year that the stadium is used at capacity. And to address the current capacity needs that they've identified as those games that do rarely go over capacity, the ISD, the board, has already procured additional seating that they've placed. If you see in the picture there where those arrows are pointing, there are 4 sets of bleachers, portable bleachers that are erected. You see in the picture that they're empty, as is the opposite side of the field at this time. I have seen some people seated in those at heavily attended games. Again, it's rare. It's a rare occasion. The reality is that if we continued to rent those bleachers every year for the next 30 years, we still wouldn't come up to $69 million worth of cost. So we clearly have options here, and I come up again that $69 million is a lot of money, and the need just does not seem to be there. There's also another field. This field that you see in the picture is located at the high school. This is a practice field. It does have a small seating capacity. I haven't found any data on what that seating capacity is. One of the things that was brought up about the use of the Yates Stadium is that there's not sufficient parking and difficulty in expanding the existing parking. Well, there's plenty of parking at the high school. In fact, they're about to add more. And there appears to be room that we could expand the seating at this stadium or this facility. And it would be at the high school, which would be more convenient for the high school football teams, I would imagine. So I think that there are options. I think that some of these should be explored in lieu of spending $69 million right now. Proposition C, a $19.6 million aquatic center. This is the pool. Again, the purpose we were told in the spring is that this was to bring the community together. At the Bond Talk meeting, one of the things they talked about was doing swimming lessons for the students of Willis ISD. Sounds like a nice thing, but I just can't imagine that that's worth $20 million to the community and the taxpayers. It's just not the purpose of the ISD resources. Again, there are currently 29 members of the Willis ISD swim team, and they have to drive to Conroe to use the pool there right now. 29 members is not a large swim team. There's no indication that we have a significant portion of students that wish to be on the swim team. And even if we did, it would have to be a huge number in order to justify $20 million on a swimming facility for them, in my mind. You may have a different opinion. A swimming facility would be very nice to have, but it's simply not a need. And we don't have a significant swim program at Willis ISD now. So we would be spending a lot of money to build one. And one of the things about the cost of all these is that not only do we have to pay for the bonds and the interest, which I'll talk about in a minute, but we would also incur a significant new cost in facility staff and maintenance fees that we would have to have in order to maintain and run and operate these facilities. So there's cost that's not even built into these bonds that's an additional burden on the taxpayers. So what does it cost? The new bonds are a total of $115.4 million in principal bond debt. That's approximately $100 million in interest, probably more, but approximately. The numbers vary depending on what you look at, what the interest rates are, and how quickly we pay them off as well. So total, that's approximately $215 million total in new bond debt between principal and interest. Our existing debt for Willis ISD, including the May bond, which doesn't actually, part of it hits this year and part of it will hit next year, but regardless, we're still on the hook for it because it is passed. That includes the 9th grade building and the parking lot improvements and the transportation center. That passed in May. So in all of our debt right now is approximately $469 million in principal and $318 million in interest. Now, the numbers are published on the state site. They should be published on the Willis ISD website, but they're not. I'm told that the Willis ISD board and staff are working on getting that information up there now, which I applaud them for. But we're approximately $787 million in debt right now. So if you add that to the $215 million in new debt with interest, that would put us at $1 billion, right at $1 billion. Again, it's an estimate. The numbers fluctuate based on how much we currently have in outlays right now for construction, for existing construction expansion, and what will be coming in the next year for bonds that have already been approved. And over the next year, hopefully, we will have paid a little bit of the existing bond debt down. So perhaps we will maintain just under $1 billion if we pass these. My hope is that we do not pass them, actually. To be perfectly honest with you, I think $1 billion is too much. It means next year we will have $100,000 in debt per each student in Willis ISD. The student body is currently right around 9,300 students. So $1 billion divided by that is in excess of $100,000 in debt for each student in Willis ISD. There are larger ISDs in Texas. There's one outside of Fort Worth that's almost 4 times our size that has approximately the same bond debt as us right now. It's not a requirement for us to take on this debt, and I want to talk about that more in a minute too. Here's what it looks like. Again, I'm a visual person, so I put it into a chart. I updated it from the last chart that we had. $418 million in interest, $584 in principal. It's just a staggering amount of money. It's a lot of money to be in debt for the Willis ISD taxpayers. And the question I keep coming up with is, am I ready for $1 billion debt for Willis ISD? Are you ready for higher property taxes? The school board puts up a calculator on their website now. It says it's only $15 per year if you have a house valued at $250,000. You can go online and you can look at put in your own home value for the debt calculator and see approximately what they think it would cost. Of course, it's an estimate because it can fluctuate and it will have the possibility of changing. The reality is that it's actually more every year, right? It's at least $15 more if you have a home that's $250,000. You're not getting a break on your current taxes. They're not going down. This is additive. These are a tax increase, period. It says so on the ballot when you see it, that each one is a tax increase and it will cause your property taxes to go up. The average Willis ISD taxes for a $250,000 home is approximately $2,000 per year and rising. That's largely due to the growth in appraisals. I'm not talking about growth this time really because none of these address growth, and Willis ISD facilities currently can accept all the growth that really is projected. And I might do another video to talk about that. But these videos are not, this video is not about that because these propositions do not address any growth. But due to the growth in appraisals, due to your home value going up, our taxes are going up, even if the tax rate is the same or only increases a little. The tax rate is why they put this language there, because the reality is that our taxes just continue to go up. I come back to this again and again. this is not a need. These 3 facilities are not a need. Do we really need a football stadium, a swimming pool, or an activity center? They're all very nice to have. They'd be neat, but they're simply not needs. The other question I come up with is why is this a priority? The purpose of our schools is not sports or community engagement or anything other than to educate our students. That is the entire reason that Willis ISD exists. Willis Athletics has been very successful without these facilities. I think we need the board and the district to make academics their first, second, and third priorities. Willis ISD received an academic report in the spring, and our schools continue to fall below the state levels. And the state levels are not very high. They're very low. The bar is very low, and we're simply barely meeting it in even some cases. Our student education outcomes are simply not where they should be. That's the reality. And nothing in these $115.4 million bonds will improve those results. This is generational debt that takes 30 to 40 years to pay off. This new debt will not improve educational outcomes for our students. Again, I asked this question in the spring, is this a good time to build? Interest rates remain high, and there's very little sign that they will decrease significantly anytime soon. That means we're borrowing massive debt at a bad time. Inflation and prices of household goods continue to remain at record highs. That means every family in Willis ISD is already spending an estimated $11,000 more in household goods than 2 years ago. Can our young and struggling families afford even more property taxes right now? People are struggling to buy homes. We see that in the news. We've seen that in the reports, the economic data. People are struggling to buy homes. People are struggling to stay in the homes they have. Housing and rent are both increasing, as well as household goods. Additional burden on our taxpayers right now, especially our low-income families, of which our district has plenty of, just adds additional burden on them that they don't need. We do have a choice. We don't need to do what other school districts are doing. We don't need $1 billion debt. Instead of saying, this is what big schools do, which I was told in the spring, I think we need to ask, what do smart schools do? Why should we be keeping up with the Joneses? We simply don't need to. Are people moving here because they want Willis to be like Conroe or the Woodlands? Have you seen the traffic in the Woodlands? Have you seen the property tax bills in the Woodlands? Ask your friends. I think people are moving to Willis because it's a nice community. It has historically low property taxes and it's not far from the lake. And frankly, we have better schools than Conroe ISD. Our students do deserve better. I've heard in the spring that these expensive, debt-laden new buildings are what our children deserve. But I think, and I continue to think this, what our children really deserve is a good education. And the truth is they're not getting that right now. Even worse, these bonds and debts don't even try to address that. I think we should be investing in a better education for our children instead of a better stadium or a swimming pool. I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. If you have any questions or comments or any information you'd like to share, if you'd like to speak to me, I'd be happy to. Just put the comments below the video and I'll try to follow up as best I can. God bless you and your family. God bless Willis. God bless the United States of America. Please don't forget to vote in November 5th election. Early voting starts October 21st. Thank you. Have a good day.